Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Thank you, Ashti and Misha, for having us here at ID Mumbai. Thank you very much. And I'm honored today to be here celebrating this dialogue between Sou and Ambrish. With Dhruv Raj Singh, we started Made India to actually create those dialogues and democratize architecture and access to architecture here in India. And we have started working with CHAP architects successfully in Jaipur, and we have developed a research and platform tomorrow that will enable dialogues of architecture, but mostly also the access to a wider audience of international and Indian architects here in India. I've been working with Sou since 2018, and I've always been struck by his relation to nature and human being, and how he manages to create a dialogue in his architecture with these elements and integrate them in a very sophisticated but also natural way, and embracing space and making the experience of space different and outstanding. Ambrish, I have the pleasure that I visit his studio many, many times. Almost every time I come to India, I try to visit Ambrish if he's not traveling. And he has a vision of architecture here that is very interesting for the connection with culture, with local resources, with conscious architecture, which has been a great example for me as a starting point to actually learn about architecture here in India. So I'm very happy to be moderating this talk. I would invite Sou and Ambrish to start with a presentation, and then we start with the questions.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Sou Fujimoto from Tokyo. And I'm very, very, very happy to be here. And actually, I've been in India from last Sunday, and then went to Delhi, visiting the Ambrish studio, and then visiting the Jaipur, the beautiful city. And then yesterday we were in Sandur, in the middle, and surrounded by a beautiful mountain. It's a beautiful, like a sanctuary-like space. And then a bit like a confusion of the flight and something, but finally last night I came to Mumbai. So this is the first time for me to be in Mumbai. So I'm very, very happy to be here, and also happy to have a conversation with Ambrish and the Oliva. So yeah, let's start to think about the nature, architecture, and people and community. That is very, very fundamental from now. Especially for my personal background, I was grown up in the natural environment, in the countryside, and then moved to Tokyo when I went to the university. So I have both of nature and crazy artifacts. So that is why I like to combine both of them together. And it is not only about the green and architecture, but also thinking about inside and outside, because mostly outside is nature, inside is architecture, but we can make it more blurred and fluid. And also inside and outside reminds me private and public. So it's more getting social relationships. So thinking about nature and architecture is really directly relating to the thinking about the people and society, private and public, and then of course architecture inside and outside, something like that. So it's quite global, fundamental question. And I will show mainly 3 projects today because we have limited time. And the first one is housing in Montpellier, which is a high-rise apartment building. And Montpellier is facing to the Mediterranean Sea, which means wonderful climate. And people go out on the terrace to enjoy their weather and eating the lunches and the dinners. So I like to respect their traditional lifestyle and the wonderful attitude to the climate and the nature. So that is why finally we propose such a crazy sticking out balconies a lot. It's huge balconies, 5 meter wide and then the 8 meter deep. And not only one balcony for one house, but the 2, 3, or sometimes 4 balconies sticking out from the one apartment like this. And interesting things is, of course, you have large balcony, but you will see some neighbors' balconies are floating around you, which is creating, I hope, the nice interrelationships with the neighbors. It's like a recreation, reinvention of the community with these vertical high-rise buildings, because normally the high-rise building is really, really like a divided and isolated. But I think from coming future, those kind of the well-controlled community or open and relaxing community created by architectural design is getting more and more important. And yeah, this is the photo 5 years ago, the completion photo, but now everything is coming out to the balcony, the greens and the terraces and the furnitures and the funny stuffs and everything, parasols. So that is like the representation of the life, wonder of life by architecture. It's not the representation of the shape of the buildings, but the showing how wonderful life in Montpellier. This is also very, very interesting project, like a huge shopping mall in the Middle East, but I maybe go through it. 100-meter towers, 7 towers, with an atrium inside. So it's like a wonderful natural ventilation device, but at the same time, the beauty of the space and the sensation of the space is created. And those structures, the layering of the frames is working as sunscreen, protecting the too strong sunlight, but at the same time bringing the beautiful particles of the sunlight coming in. So it is like a wonderful integration of climate conditions, cultural conditions into the architectural structures. And yeah, this is wonderful. Yeah, at that time I thought in the Middle East they have like a non-limited budget, so yeah, we put the pools, entire buildings, and then putting the boats and something. But finally, it was a competition, and I really love it. And then we sent big panels, 25 big panels to the client. But finally, client changed his mind, and then entire competition was canceled. But I'm still hoping this project is amazing. So hopefully, yeah, I can see today we have many possible visionary clients within this audience. So yeah, please just let me know after the lecture, yeah, to do the collaboration. And yeah, this is a private house, but I don't have time. What? Now it's this is a private house, amazing private house, covering the garden to make the outdoor garden as extension of your room. So it is making so different from the surrounding typical residential area, but the beautiful garden as like a nature room, and from inside, the outside is really kind of like a particles of the skies is surrounding you, so protected, but at the same time quite open, which is like a private is well protected, but it's not enclosed. It's more like open mind feelings. And serpentine pavilions, beautiful experimental architecture, only made by such a thin frames, and creating the blurring boundary between nature and architecture. And then I will explain a bit more about this project in Budapest, Hungary. Budapest is a city of music, and they decided to make the music hall, music museum, and the music education programs in the middle of the forest of the beautiful city park. Then the first idea was to but the forest itself is already the place for playing the music and listening to the music. This is very beautiful, but I need to make something architectural, so I translated the forest into the architecture. The tree leaves are getting into the thickness of the roof with many openings, perforations, so that the daylight is coming through like a forest. And then the ground level is really transparent and open so that you feel you are surrounded by the green forest in the middle of the forest. And the exhibition space is huge, so we put it underground. And finally, it is built. You will see so many openings, so the daylight is coming through that. Under the roof, you feel you are under the tree. And you will see some of the openings has tree inside because we preserved the existing trees and we designed the openings following to the existing tree and make the buildings while keeping the existing tree. And finally, if you go under the roof, then you will see the tree is going through the buildings, and then the roof is so much extended, like a big canopy. So we have the space under the buildings, but still outside, and then inside and outside, nature and architecture is merging to each other. So that is like the intention to create such an in-between space. And some of the in-between space has such an amphitheater so that people can enjoy the concert on outside while protected from the rain by the canopy. And once you are inside, the glass is just dividing, so it's so transparent and continuing. And this is the view of the concert hall, pure made by the glass. So transparent concert hall, open to the green, and which is very beautiful. And of course, acoustically, we worked very hard to make it like a nice acoustics and a view from the lobby space again. So the entire building is almost like a melting into the surrounding greens. And this golden color is, we respected the historical building in Budapest. They have a lot of golden decorations and ornaments, interior, exterior. So that is like a reinterpretation of the history into the contemporary architecture. And at the same time, this golden color is harmonized with the greens, always changing the color from the springtime to the summertime, autumn, and even the wintertime. Every tree leaves is gone, so gray and brown colors of the park. But these tint gold color buildings is like a shining destination. Warm atmospheres attract people in the middle of the sad, cold winter time. So that was the intention to create that. And then library in Tokyo made only by the bookshelves, like a labyrinth of the books and a forest of the books, so that you can just meander throughout the whole entire library to encounter with something unexpected ideas and new ideas, just like you are walking in the forest. And this is also very interesting, like a green roof in the middle of the traditional shrine, which is amazing. So beautiful contrast. And this is a temporary shrine, while the main buildings is for the refurbishment for 3 years. And this is completely new contemporary architecture, but at the same time purely harmonized with the surrounding condition. So new and old, tradition and the future are well combined together. And we are doing the large, crazy huge museum, 100,000 square meter museum in Shenzhen, which is like the pure box on outside. But inside of the box, surface of the box is like a sunscreen, so protecting the sunlight, too strong sunlight of Shenzhen, to create the protected environment inside. And then inside is more organic and dynamic and fluid, so that it is creating the park or garden environment as well as urban environment, and which is huge. It's like the ceiling height is almost like a 50-meter high in this atrium, so it is quite like something beyond the normal buildings. And the last one is the expo. I'm designing the master plan for the expo next year to 2025. And then the plot is man-made island, but it was almost abandoned. So they will activate this island by bringing expo. And my master plan is finally bringing this circle shape, big roof, because expo, meaning of the expo is now, in the beginning of this 21st century, it's getting more and more important because we like to respect the diversities of so many different countries and cultures, but on the other hand, the global situation is more divided. So like to respect the diversity, but divided situation is so sad. So I like to create the diversity and the unity together. That is like the situation. Oh, so many countries are coming to one place for 6 months, face to face, on a real space, to talk about our future together. That is really hopeful, wonderful situation. So respecting the diversity and creating the unity. So for that, I draw one pure circle as a big roof. And within this circle, all the national pavilions are located. So this is like a symbol of the unity and the diversity of the future global world. And of course, functionally, this is like a main circulation path. And we made a big roof to protect the people from the sunlight and the rains. And so this is like a functional, but beyond the function, this is like a hope for the future of the world, so that such a wonderful diversities of the cultures are gathering together, starts to talk to create the better unity. And we are now making this by wooden construction, because we have, in Japan, we have more than 1,000 years history of the wooden construction, and now the beginning of 21st century, the wooden structure is considered as one of the future technology because of the sustainability cycle of the planting the woods and then the cutting the woods, but replanting the trees, so that it is like a natural cycle to produce all the construction materials. And now it is under construction, growing, and it's amazing. It's huge, 30 meter wide and a 20 meter tall, and really, really wonderful. So I hope it is starting in 2025, April, so I hope you to come to Osaka, Japan, to see it. That's kind of an exceptional things. And one more thing, on top of the roof, people can climb up, walk on the roof, and the edge of the roof is lifted up on the outerwards, so you can cut out one sky. Sky is not like something behind it, but you will see the sky itself as like a pure, beautiful object and as a representation of the unity of the entire world, because all the people can look up the same one sky, and the sky is surrounding the earth. So from anywhere, when you look up the sky, it's the one sky, same sky. So that is the message to create the diversity and unity by this expo. And again, they're coming back to this like a huge circular ring. One around is 2 kilometers, and the diameter-wise is 700 meters. It's crazy size, but it is happening now. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm here representing my studio, Studio Lotus. We are a team of about 110 working together out of New Delhi. As we enter the 22nd year of our practice, we still start each day slightly unsure, yet excited, as we navigate our way through projects of different scales, complexity, from hotels, museums, and institutions to small homes, restaurants, and bars. But what I'd like to lean into today is the why and the how of what we do. As our practice keeps reshaping itself to changing external conditions, clients, typologies, there's an underlying set of design values that guides our process, one that we believe speaks to the changing needs of the vast diversity of our country, guiding principles that in some way address not only environmental concerns, but equally the sustainability of a social and cultural context. These are framed more as questions that we ask ourselves ongoingly through the course of a project, and often as a larger direction for the future of our practice. Frugality, we believe, has been a key aspiration. How can we do more and more with less and less? The idea of keeping our solutions forward-looking, yet simple and low-tech, for ease of access to a larger audience, adaptation, repair, reuse. The idea of durability, not just in material and form, but equally through projects that endure in people's imaginations for their inherent meaning. We are aware that most of our clients are high net worth individuals and luxury brands. So then can we reframe what luxury means using local materials, processes, and for instance, elevating these with a high degree of craftsmanship? Lastly, and not the least, weaving all of this together as a work of poetry that continues to inspire us. I'll run through a short journey of how this has manifested through some of our projects. One of our very early projects 16 years ago in a luxury mall called Emporio in Delhi, where our neighbors were these fancy stores with imported fit-outs, and we had a space right next to these, but 1/10 the budget and 2 months to build the whole store out. The client was Rajesh Pratap Singh, a leading fashion designer, who called himself an elevated tailor. We looked at, could we elevate a humble welder to the level of a craftsperson? What would that look like? So we worked with 12,000 scissors procured from the neighboring town of Meerut and welded them off-site in 14 patterns onto steel frames that were bolted together on-site and placed within a simple whitewash shell with a sandstone floor. This lattice frame celebrated frugality, and the imperfections of the hand welding only added to the tactility of the space, as you see in the image on the right. This not only achieved the budget and time goals, but became a celebration of the client's brand philosophy. Moving on to our first architectural project, which we completed in 2010, a 6,000 square meter plot in the old city of Jodhpur with 3 17th century buildings on site that had been altered crudely over the years by multiple families living there and had been left with none of their original beauty. We had to build 40 rooms for the business plan to work. We proposed using the 3 old buildings as anchors and 3 new buildings as room blocks. A sliver of an opening slices through the first room block to become a second gateway that creates a reveal for the rest of the site, to frame the site such that the old and the new blocks combine together around the courtyard and frame the spectacular Mehrangarh fort. The traditional buildings got restored in lime and stone and became the restaurants, spa, and sitting areas. And the new buildings, in fact, were a lot more challenging because we were trying to create a new vocabulary using traditional skills and materials with a double skin structure with naturally ventilated corridors and balconies. We needed to have the west face openable to get views of the fort. To make these stone panels openable, we needed a 20 millimeter thickness, which was too thin to hand cut these patterns without cracking the stone. And the only way we could do it would be to use a CNC water jet cut machine. However, we chose to stay true to the process and tried a form that was much simpler, a graded perforation that could be cut by hand. So we altered the design to suit the process. And we procured these stones from 10 kilometers from site. And the shutters you see here are fabricated by local welders and stonemasons. They weigh 420 kilos and continue to work pretty smoothly 15 years later. The desert sun creates changing shadows through the day on the monochromatic stone. And at night, the playful facade changes form as the stone filigree feels like fabric. And the buildings become lanterns framing the site at night. But the relationship with artisans went beyond into elements such as bush-hammered wall patterns that were generated by them at site through iteration and not on a drawing board by a designer. This breathes life into this otherwise inert material. We realized that if we are truly to create something authentic that adds value not only to the building but to all stakeholders, we need to go beyond the visual form and stay true to the value or the process of what we're creating. A happy coincidence when we started rationalizing our work many years later, we found that aside from the value it added to the craft, the jali we did by hand has an embodied carbon which is nearly 1/5 that of done by a water jet machine. In a totally different context, a leading jeweler from Jaipur, Sunita Shekhawat, came to us to build her a new Haveli for her eponymous brand. There was already a structure that was on site, which she had recently built, which she did not like, and she wanted us to bring it down and build anew. The concrete structure was in good shape, and even though we would have had more freedom and a greater fee in building a new building, we chose to look at what we could do to repurpose the structure. And in the process, we avoided emissions of more than 500,000 kilos of carbon, and ended up with a project that elevates the brand by building on the arts and crafts narrative of her crafted jewelry, and gives the brand and the city an iconic building rooted in the region. We took the narrative of crafts into the interior, and the retail spaces have narratives of Rajasthani miniature frescoes interpreted at scales and form which had not been explored by them so far. It was a new kind of scale for them and a new technique for them to work with. So this created diverse narratives from gardens of the region in multiple zones as you meander through the different spaces of the store. And we started looking at this idea of circularity. Can it look to the future? For this visitor center at the base of the spectacular Mehrangarh Fort, we perched a humble grid of stone and metal slabs, which allows for the building to be reconfigured with changing use. The building uses no mortar, no cement, no glue. The sandstone slabs are interlocked and pinned onto the metal superstructure, and aside from the waterproofing membrane on the top, the entire building can be disassembled and reused because it's a modular system. In fact, over the course of the last 2 years, it has undergone 3 variations as the needs of the program have changed. This is still under construction and it should be finished in a couple of months. So this idea of using a grid and using a material in its pure form, the absence of any glue or mortar required for us to do an intense amount of detailing to create sealed air-conditioned rooms, insulated walls, which combine with porous jali walls, all of which come together to float lightly off the hill, allowing the rainwater from the hill to flow under it into the existing collection pond at the base of the site. The last few slides are about Krishi Bhavan, a state government project in Bhubaneswar, Orissa. It was proposed for the offices of the Department of Agriculture and also for the farmers of the state to get trained in best practices. Well, we suggested tilting the offices up over the ground plane and opening the building to the citizens of the city after office hours, so that the auditoriums, the galleries, the learning rooms, and the landscape could become an amenity, a facility for the citizens and the city. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into something very important to us currently. So the client's expectation was to do a modern building which was air-conditioned, of course, even though the earlier offices were not air-conditioned. We felt there was an opportunity to look at this in a totally new way. There's a lot of research being done globally on the idea of adaptive thermal comfort. And what's really interesting to see is that there is no standard temperature that is comfortable universally, even though we are being taught to design to a standard. Studies have shown that people's thermal comfort depends on the people's current context. When people dress appropriately, eat local, and get acclimatized to prevalent conditions, thermal comfort levels need less intervention. When we combine this with passive structures that are designed sensibly, huge energy efficiencies can be brought in with little technology. A small segue to show this, that this is possible in an urban environment. This is the Royal Enfield corporate headquarters in Chennai. I only have phone photos of this. By the simple act of segregating areas that are air-conditioned to workspaces and keeping other areas such as breakout spaces and circulation spaces naturally ventilated through multiple gestures such as this rain and sunscreen of Mangalore clay tiles held by steel cables or operable louvers across the breakout areas, we could achieve a 35% reduction in energy consumption with standard technology. Coming back to Krishi Bhavan, which follows a similar principle of a courtyard, morphology and ventilation, 85% of the building is cooled through a night purge system. So what it means is when in the evening the air temperature drops by about 12 to 14 degrees in Bhubaneswar, louvers open up on the facade and the building is flushed with cool evening air throughout the night. The walls of the building are very thick with a high thermal mass, all the glazing is shaded. So all this cool gets trapped into the walls, the furniture and the partitions. And in the morning, when people come back to work after 9, and as the outdoor temperature rises, the fans come on, and the entire thermal mass of the building acts like a giant air cooling mechanism. By the time the building warms up, it's time for them to leave and the louvers close. So the building actually has achieved a rating of 31 kilowatt hours per meter square per year, which is 1/3 that of the standards set for 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and a fraction of the current offices buildings which consume about 200 kilowatt hours per meter square. The layer of identity was very critical because Odisha is an agricultural state and this building was a symbol of the new Odisha. We derived motifs from the traditional textile craft of the region, worked with 4 colors of brick, and generated a facade which has many functions. To begin with, it's a porous solar screen that shades all the glass that allows daylight in. It's an iconic facade that belongs to the people of the region. Lastly, but not the least, we pushed the idea of getting the government to be a patron for a kind of craft revival at an architectural scale. We did so by designing a ground plane in a way that it becomes a canvas for over 50 to 60 artisans who worked for 6 months on site while the rest of the building was being constructed. We involved a local architect who then created narratives around agriculture using stone carving, dhokra, which is metalwork, and so on, all over from the region. But the most, I think, exciting thing about the project that we had to let go of our control as a designer and allow for people, for the artisans to take lead. So while the design was being conceptualized in situ on site, it was hand-drawn and carved with no room for error. And we had to let go and trust the process. And I think that was really one of our biggest learnings. So I'm going to leave you with a film that captures the experience of the artisans as they went through this process.
We were quite excited, with the quantum of work that could be generated if artisans, if craft and architecture could come together. And I think that has been a big achievement, that this building project could generate work for about 50 artisans for a continuous 6 months. And we actually got, artisans who had stopped working in the traditional skills. We convinced them to come back and to start working again.
काम करुले सेमान भी सेमती के निर्दिष्ट गोटे ही काम भितर रही चिंताधाराटा से गोटे भितर रही निर्दिष्ट मूर्ति बनवारे चिंताधाराटा से भितर सीमित थिला जार फल यही कामटा कृषि भवन काम करे आम मानक देखागला प्रकृत में आम आम कलाटा को केमतिका अन्य दृष्टि भी देखि परिबा.
It's a perfect setting for us where we could bring in artisans and craft. If you talk of farmers and if you talk about people coming from villages to this building, then we want to show them something that's familiar to their environment, and that is where craft comes in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And we managed to enter your world and your achievements and your achieved dreams in a way. I would like to start with one question that came out of actually our discussion that we had in your office in Delhi, which is how do you integrate the values and the philosophy that you have both shared now on your presentations in project where you have a urban high density context, and how, like, what is your starting point, and how do you integrate, and how, in a way, what would you suggest, or yes?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the beautiful presentation. I'm really, really touched, impressed by that. Thank you. Yeah, for the question, that's always kind of a difficult task for me. But yeah, I think it is like relating to the Ambrish presentation. If we think about like a standard number or standard thinkings, then we need like a space for like bedrooms, space for working. So those certain numbers is needed. And then the temperature is something like this. And then the clothes should be like something like that. But if we start to question what is the meaning of this standard number, then many possibilities is coming out. I didn't show the project in Tokyo, very small house named the house NA, which is the house for the couple, but the plot is really small. So we thought about if you make a standard house, it is just a small house with one living space, one bedrooms and something. So we divided the floors into smaller pieces, almost like a size of the furniture, and then stuck them up as like the large shelves. Then it is the reinvention of the lifestyle and reinvention of how to use the space in a high density situation. So in Tokyo, in India, yeah, we can forget about standard things. And then, but at the same time, seriously see how people behave and how people communicate, and then could find out something new and something really fitting to our lifestyle, place by place. So that is always like a re-questioning. Forget about it and a re-questioning, and then find out something like important in a sense.
You know, and I'll just add to what you said. I think what you did, now I don't know if the Montpellier apartment block is very high density, but it is relatively high density as compared to a rural kind of or a semi-urban setting. And I think some of the questions that got addressed are very fundamental to human experience and what it means to build. I mean, what's the challenge of urbanism fundamentally? And my belief is that the challenge of urbanism is the breakdown of community. In a rural area, there's lower density, but a greater sense of community. And in cities, more and more people are coming together, but there is no sense of community, you know? And so while it's quite tempting to pass on, you know, and it is to some degree the role of planners and urban guidelines. But I think how willing are we to let go of the boundaries between what's my private space, what's the public space? How much do I want to share? You know, this is mine, and everything outside my main door is not mine, you know? And I think, for instance, what you did with your balconies, and I'm sure it mustn't have been easy for the developer, right? I mean, he said, are you crazy? Like, there's no privacy, this balcony is looking into that balcony and so on, right? But I think you almost forced this idea of living with other people and sharing their lives. And yes, you want to be private, you move in, and you want to share, you move out. So even if you don't like your neighbor, you still have to see him or her, and improve. Shift your thinking. And I think in the Indian context, I really kind of respect Ashok Lal's thinking. Ashok Lal is a leading Indian architect, and he's kind of always propagated this idea of a low-rise, high-density plan, only because vertical mobility actually disconnects people. The lower we are, if we can connect on foot, we have stairs, we use landings, we are closer together, there is a greater sense of community. And to me, that is the peril of our new urban developments, that we are getting more and more disconnected as human beings and as communities.
Yeah, actually, I think this brings us back to creating spaces that are highly connected, like the St. Gallen University, where even though it's maybe a few floors and not just a flat surface, it actually creates that connection. And so how to integrate those connections in the project?
Yeah, I think so. So sometimes horizontal, like platforms, we just make the distances. But if you make it vertical and well connected by atriums or a vertical void, then suddenly various different types of the interrelationships could happen, like the balconies of Montpellier. And then that's I think, a good point of the density. High density is not like a negative thing. High density, if we properly treat it, then we can create the new, like a community feelings, new distances, and a new, like intimate feelings as well. So that's really depends on the creativity of the designer and architects. And that is the point we can develop more and more, I think.
Can I ask a question? So I'm going to be very selfish. This is a question I really want to ask you. So Sou, you're at the pinnacle of the profession. You are where a lot of architects dream of being. Yeah, you have beautiful sites. You have clients all over the world. You have a chance to continue pushing the dream. Yeah. However, I'm just curious, after, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 years of your practice, now that you look back and where you are today, what are your biggest challenges?
Wow, that's very fundamental question. As you always ask me, very fundamental question. But the challenge is, of course, we have many technical challenges, but the more important challenge is how we can create, like as we discussed outside, right before this session, I think how we can create the hope for the world, in a sense. Because of course, we try to create the value, but it is not only about the practical value, it's not only about the money value, but something people will be very excited and think about something unexpected, in a sense, creating something people don't understand yet, but like to experience and like to understand, likes to go beyond that. So those kind of the excitement of the people is really, really important for our life and then for our future, in a sense. So that is why I was talking about the Expo master plan. It could be the hope for the world, because nobody yet recognized so many countries, entire worlds are gathering together in one place. And what's happened? But something fundamental, important things could happen by face-to-face conversations, real, like feelings to each other. And for those kind of the place, what kind of a design and what kind of a message should be there? And that is like was the challenge, and is continuing a challenge to think about not only practical solutions, not only like the proposal for our tomorrow, but pushing or encouraging people to be excited and could have a hope. Of course, could be various different hopes, diversities of the hopes, but something, excitement.
The conversation Sou was referring to, we were outside, and I was telling him about this chat I had with this famous Dutch product designer, Marcel Wonders, and we had met somewhere, and it was really interesting, and we were talking about the Netherlands and how in Europe, especially the Scandinavian belt and the Netherlands, they've never had a greater level of development. That means there is no poverty, there's 100% education for everyone, there's 100% health. And yet, he found it really curious. He said, there's so much depression. And he said, look, what we've lost, we've gained everything, but we've lost a sense of hope. We don't know what's next, right? There's no story to live for. And he said, I come to India, and it's crazy, like it's chaotic, nothing works, everything's falling apart, but there's hope on the faces of people. There are problems to solve. And I think that really hit home very hard, because as an Indian, when we travel abroad, we look at the world and say, oh, wow, everything functions, when are we going to get there? But I think what we miss is an appreciation of the fact that we have continuously problems to solve, and that is what makes our lives exciting. So I think, that's something that I wanted to leave all of us with, is that one of our roles, and Sou, which you do so beautifully, what you just spoke about, is to create, yes, we design, but we design to create hope. And we do it in a way, in your own small little way. There's a dream, and you live that dream. And there's no dream that's too big or too small. And I think, thank you for bringing that out.